6. Seller disclosure. What do you know about the property? 2 days after the listing appointment, Sarah receives a text from Jennifer. I started filling out the disclosure paperwork. Can you just come over and tell me what I should put? If you're a listing agent, that request probably sounds familiar. Sarah could certainly help Jennifer understand the purpose of the disclosure process and direct her to instructions or appropriate resources, but there's an important boundary here. These are the seller's disclosures. Sarah should not turn Jennifer's disclosure statement into Sarah's disclosure statement by deciding how Jennifer should answer every question. Sarah calls Jennifer. I'll absolutely help you understand the process, she says, but I want you and Mike to answer the property questions based on what you actually know. Jennifer pauses. So you can't just fill it out for us? No, I need the information to come from you. That's an important distinction. The SPDS is a useful example of a disclosure tool commonly encountered in Arizona residential transactions. But the bigger lesson is not about memorizing a particular form. The purpose of disclosure is to communicate known information so the parties can make informed decisions. Remember the roof leak from our first listing appointment? Jennifer reaches that subject and calls Sarah again. Okay, here's my problem. The roof leaked 4 years ago, but we fixed it. If I put that down, isn't the buyer going to think the roof still leaks? That's exactly why sellers sometimes become nervous about disclosure. They confuse disclosing the history of a condition with admitting that the condition currently exists. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. Sarah shouldn't tell Jennifer how to answer a particular question or make a legal determination about what Jennifer must write. But Sarah can explain why complete and accurate information matters and encourage Jennifer to describe what she actually knows. If Jennifer has documentation showing what happened and what was repaired, that information may also be useful. The updated September 2025 Arizona Realtors Listing Agreement provides a helpful example. Its owner obligations section requires the owner to disclose known adverse information and provide accurate property information. It also identifies documents such as the SPDS and insurance claims history among the information that may become part of a residential transaction. Again, we're using the form as an example, not suggesting that every brokerage or listing uses this particular agreement. Jennifer finds the old roofing invoice. Sarah, apparently the insurance company paid for drywall repairs too. I forgot about that. There's the sentence again. I forgot about that. This is why disclosure is a process rather than a single piece of paperwork. Sellers may have owned a property for 5, 10, or 20 years. They don't always remember everything during the first conversation. Looking through invoices, insurance records, repair receipts, warranties, emails, and other documents can remind them about events they haven't thought about in years. Now imagine something different. Suppose Jennifer completes her disclosure and marks that she is unaware of any previous roof problems. Sarah knows that's inconsistent with what Jennifer already told her. Can Sarah simply say, well, it's her disclosure form, not mine, and put it in the file? That's where the agent needs to be careful. Arizona's licensee duties are not necessarily satisfied by simply passing along whatever a seller writes. AAC R428-1101 establishes disclosure obligations for the licensee concerning certain material/adverse information the licensee possesses. That means there can be two separate questions. What does the seller know, and what does the licensee know? The fact that Jennifer completes a disclosure document doesn't erase information Sarah independently possesses. This is something ADRE investigators can examine when a complaint occurs. What did the agent know? When did the agent know it? What did the agent communicate? What documentation exists in the transaction file? Now let's change the scenario. Jennifer accurately discloses the previous leak and writes that the roof was completely repaired and has absolutely no problems. Sarah asks, how do you know there are absolutely no problems? Well, it hasn't leaked since. There's a difference between saying what happened and guaranteeing a technical condition. Sarah should be cautious about turning the seller's assumption into a marketing claim. If the present condition of the roof needs to be determined, that's where an appropriate inspection or roofing professional may come into the picture. The same principle applies throughout the property. Suppose Mike says the air conditioner works perfectly. What does perfectly mean? Suppose Jennifer says there have never been termites. Does she actually know that? Or does she mean they've never personally seen termites? Suppose Mike says the kitchen remodel is completely permitted. Did he verify that? Or is he assuming the contractor handled it? Here's where many agents create unnecessary risk. They take casual seller statements and turn them into definitive advertising claims. Slow down. Ask the next question. How do we know that? What documentation do you have? Has that been verified? Do we need an appropriate professional to answer that? That isn't being difficult. That's practicing real estate professionally. The February 2026 Arizona residential purchase contract provides another example of why this information matters. Once a buyer is under contract, seller disclosures and changes involving the property can affect the buyer's investigation and contractual decisions. It's much easier to address known information before the property is under contract than to explain why something important appeared for the first time during the buyer's inspection period. Sarah tells Jennifer, "We're not trying to make your house look bad. We're trying to make sure buyers receive accurate information and have the opportunity to make their own decisions." That's the point. Disclosure isn't about convincing the buyer that a condition is good or bad. It's about providing known information so the buyer can evaluate it. A seller may worry that disclosure will scare a buyer away, but imagine the alternative. The buyer discovers the information after closing and believes it was intentionally concealed. Now the issue isn't just the roof. The issue is trust. The issue may be a complaint. The issue may be the transaction file. The issue may be what Sarah knew and what she did with that information. That's why experienced listing agents don't treat disclosure as a form to get signed and forget. They treat it as an ongoing responsibility. Jennifer finishes the call and says, "Okay, I'll go through our records and see what else we have." "Perfect," Sarah says. "And while you're doing that, let's also gather your insurance history, HOA information, and those solar documents." Jennifer laughs. "You really like paperwork." Sarah smiles. "Only when it keeps us from having surprises later." And that's where we're headed next in Section 6. Insurance claims, HOA, solar, and the documents sellers forget. Online discussion 1. Jennifer asks Sarah to complete the seller disclosure form for her because Sarah understands real estate paperwork better. How should Sarah respond? Answer: Sarah can explain the purpose of the disclosure process and help Jennifer locate instructions or appropriate resources, but the property information should come from Mike and Jennifer based on their knowledge. Sarah should avoid substituting her own answers for the seller's knowledge or directing them to answer questions in a particular way simply to make the property more marketable. 2. Jennifer's disclosure says she is unaware of previous roof problems, but Sarah remembers Jennifer discussing a prior roof leak and insurance claim. Why is this important? Answer: Sarah has information that may create an independent responsibility for her as a licensee. She should not assume that the seller's disclosure form eliminates the licensee's own disclosure obligations. The inconsistency should be addressed rather than ignored, and Sarah should involve her designated broker when necessary. Why should Sarah avoid advertising that the roof is perfect simply because it has not leaked since the repair? Answer: the absence of another known leak does not necessarily establish the technical condition of the roof. Sarah should distinguish known facts from assumptions or guarantees. If the present physical condition requires evaluation, an appropriately qualified professional should make that determination rather than the real estate licensee.